It is a privilege and joy to be with you in this 2024 Ministry Mental Health Summit in Canada at Tyndale University. It's also my passion and life work to equip ministry leaders and churches to support mental health care in your community. And our focus today is what I consider to be the most important discovery in psychology in the past century, like Einstein's E equals mc squared, that unify physics. Attachment provides a framework to bring together behavior, cognition, emotion, and relationship bond. Of course, my background as a primary care provider with special interests in couple and family therapy and emotionally focused therapy has led to my appreciation of attachment as the key to understanding and transforming behavior, cognition, emotion, and relationship. My passion is to train helping professionals locally and in Asia and empower faith leaders and faith communities to support mental health care. We have two learning objectives this afternoon. First, learn to use attachment to understand and transform relationship with God, family members, partners, and parts of self through case examples and videos. Second, to experience how attachment can be applied to working with individuals, couples, families, and groups. I don't have any disclosures. So this is what we will cover today. We'll start with the theological base of attachment as part of the created order. The creation story in Genesis is marked by 7 goods. Good, 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 very good. And suddenly, no good. That's how the Bible emphasizes the no, not good. What is the not good? That is so important. The not good is, it is not good for the man to be alone. And research shows that loneliness kills. It increases the risk of dying early by 39%, and its mortality effect is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, according to the U.S. Surgeon General. And I would argue that every book in the Bible is about attachment, the loss of attachment, and the restoration of attachment with God, other people, and within ourselves. Let's watch a short video to help you experience the good of being attached and the not good of being alone. Some of you may already be familiar with the work of Ed Tronick in Boston, who spent his life studying the interaction between infants and their parents and noticed the impact of attachment, loss of attachment, and restoring attachment on the infant's behavior and emotional regulation. So the clip that I'm to show is called Still Face Experiment. And I want you to observe 3 parts in this video. The first part, well, it's about the good. Baby and dad are playing together. The second part is the not good. That's the dad with the still face, and the baby tries to re-engage dad, gets frustrated, looks away, dissolves, protests, it's uncomfortable and dysregulated. And then the third part, dad is responsive. Again, there's a joyous reunion. The baby settles down, is back in the comfort zone, it's grounded, explores the world, tries new things, and has a safe base and has a trust with the father once more. Okay, let's go to our screen share.
What we've learned over the years is that babies are much more capable than we initially imagined, but they're also much more vulnerable. And in Edtronic's still face experiment, we get to see both in a very short period. We see the baby and the dad playing together in their routines. There are things that they know about each other and things that they do together, and it's fun. And then we ask the dad to turn away, and when he turns back, to keep his face completely still and not respond to the baby. And the results are almost immediate, and they're devastating. The baby looks to the dad and tries to get the dad to get back into those games. Hey, we were just playing just a minute ago, weren't we? We were having fun. What's going on? And then the baby starts to get frustrated when that doesn't work. So she'll have to look away and look around the room and find something else and then look back and say, now can we play? And within 3 minutes, the baby has really dissolved. She is trying to get out of the chair. She's uncomfortable. She's reaching out to dad. She's crying. And then we ask the dad to turn away again. And when he turns back, to go back to being regular dad. And it's a joyous reunion. They get back into their routines, the things that they do together, the things that they were just doing 3 minutes before. And the baby settles down and gets back to the comfort zone that she's developed with the dad. What we see in the still face experiment is how able the child is to initiate and be part of the relationship between the father and the child, but also how much she depends on that relationship in order to keep an even keel. And when she's grounded and comfortable, she can explore the world, she can meet new people,
Hola.
she can try new things, and she's got that safe base that she can always rely on. And there's a trust level there. We can only begin to imagine what it's like for babies whose life is like that 3 minutes all of the time. And they don't get that responsiveness, and they don't get any help getting back to an even keel. And the results can be very tragic. They can have trouble trusting people, they can have trouble relating to people, and they can have trouble being calm enough so that they can explore the world and take part in the world. So we know that those initial relationships, that initial responsiveness and interaction between the father and the baby are keys to the baby's success as a child and as an adult.
So it's not good to be alone. Let's move on to introduce attachment theory and attachment types. So we're going to show a 7-minute video to help you to understand attachment and also your own attachment type. Let's review the key learning points before the video on attachment theory, how childhood affects life. So the key learning points are, first, a strong emotional and physical bond to at least one primary caregiver in our first years of life is crucial to our development. And if this bonding is strong and we're securely attached, then we feel safe to explore the world. We know there's always a safe base to which we can return to anytime. And if the bond is weak, we feel insecurely attached. We're afraid to leave or explore a rather scary-looking world, and we're not sure whether we can return. We can assess attachment style already by age of 1. To do this, we just let the child play with their mothers for a few minutes inside a room, then the child is left alone, and the key moment is the child's reaction when the mother returns. The long-term effects of our attachment in the early years are well documented. Insecure attachment is associated with dropping out of high school and health issues, including heart disease, hypertension, alcoholism. Kids that feel securely attached can make friends at kindergarten, and as their worldview gets reinforced with every interaction, they develop optimism. As a result, they can form good relationships at school, then at college, and later at work. So I'm going to use 4 kids in the video to reflect on your experience with primary caregivers during your childhood and infancy, and also the consequences, namely the attachment type that you are most close to. So there's Luca with secure attachment. He experiences caregiver as affectionate, loving, warm, emotionally and physically present. So he's trusting, optimistic, and he has a positive sense of self. Then there's Anne. She experienced her caregiver as lacking attention, unpredictable, overwhelmed, stressed out. And then she is anxious, clingy, she screams to get attention, she's moody, unpredictable, and she doesn't show her true feelings. There's Joe, who's anxious, avoidant, and he experienced his caregiver as being angry, straight, and punitive. And the consequence is he avoids showing his feelings, he has a negative self-image, and then lastly there's Amy, anxious, disorganized. She experienced her caregiver as incompetent, overworked, stressed out, abusive. And then the consequence is Anne is disorganized. She has disorganized ideas about love and safety. She's fearful, she's avoidant, she feels unworthy of love, and also has a negative sense of self.
The attachment theory argues that a strong emotional and physical bond to one primary caregiver in our first years of life is critical to our development. If our bonding is strong and we are securely attached, then we feel safe to explore the world. We know that there is always that safe base which we can return to any time. If our bond is weak, we feel insecurely attached. We are afraid to leave or explore a rather scary-looking world because we are not sure if we can return. People who are securely attached are said to have greater trust, can connect to others, and as a result are more successful in life. Insecurely attached people tend to mistrust others, lack social skills, and have problems forming relationships. There is one type of secure attachment, and there are 3 types of insecure attachments: anxious ambivalent, anxious avoidant, and anxious disorganized. In responses to distress, the first 3 react organized, while the last acts disorganized. To understand the theory better, let's look at Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who have 4 children: Luca, Anne, Joe, and Amy. The Smiths are lovely parents who cuddle, make frequent eye contact, speak warmly, and are always there for their kids. But one day, Mr. Smith falls very sick and dies. For Mrs. Smith, life now becomes very difficult. She spends all day working, while at the same time trying to care for her children. An impossible task. At 6 years of age, Luca's brain is for the most part developed, his character strong and his worldview shaped. The new situation does not affect him much. He knows there is still always Mum, his safe haven. He feels securely attached. Later, he turns into a trusting and optimistic young man. His self-image is positive. Anne, who is 3, has problems coping with the new lack of attention. To Anne, her mother now acts unpredictably. She is anxious about their relationship and as a result becomes clingy. To get her mum's attention, she has to raise her emotional state and scream. When her mum finally reacts with a predictable response, she herself acts ambivalent and doesn't show her true feelings. Later in life, others think Anne is unpredictable or moody. Her self-image is less positive. Her attachment style is anxious ambivalent. 2-year-old Joe spends his days with his uncle, who loves him, but thinks that a good education means being strict. If little Joe shows too much emotion or is too loud, his uncle gets angry and sometimes punitive. This scares Joe. He learns that to avoid fear, he has to avoid showing his feelings, also in other situations. As an adult, he continues this strategy and has problems entering relationships. His image of himself is rather negative. His attachment is anxious avoidant. Amy, who is just 1 year old, gets sent to a nursery. The staff there is poorly trained, overworked, and often very stressed. Some are outright abusive. Amy therefore becomes anxious of the very people she seeks security from, a conflict which totally disorganizes her ideas about love and safety. As she is experiencing fear without resolution, she tries to avoid all social situations. As an adult, she thinks of herself as unworthy of love. Her self-image is very negative. Her attachment is anxious, disorganized. Our attachment is formed in the very first years of our lives, a time when we are too young to communicate our anxiety and as a result can experience high levels of stress. Then our adrenal gland, an organ sitting on top of our kidneys, produces the stress hormones adrenaline and cortisol. The heart rate increases, the blood pressure goes up, and we become alert. If that happens frequently, it is called toxic stress. Toxic because it impairs the development of a child's brain and weakens the immune system. In embryos or at a very young age, toxic stress can even switch the expressions of genes, which can affect our health many decades later. By simulating a strange situation, we can assess an attachment style already by the age of 1. To do this, we let the child play with their mother for a few minutes inside a room. Then the child is left alone. The key moment is the child's reaction when her mother returns. Securely attached children first usually hug their mother, then can calm down and eventually get back to playing. Insecurely attached children can be ambivalent and avoidant. Some can't stop crying or refuse to continue playing. The long-term effects of our attachment in the early years are well documented. Using the theory, researchers at Minnesota University were able to predict already at age 3 if a child would drop out of high school with 77% accuracy. In another study, undergraduates at Harvard were asked to assess how close they felt to their parents. 35 years later, they were asked about their health. 91% of those who said they had a rather broken relationship with their mother were also diagnosed with health issues, including coronary artery disease, hypertension, and alcoholism. For those that had reported a warm relationship, the figure of poor health diagnosis was just 45%. But there is another reason why the early years deserve special attention. They are the starting place for subsequent behaviors. A kid that feels securely attached at age 2 can make friends at kindergarten. Their worldview gets reinforced with every interaction and they develop optimism. As a result, they make good relationships at school, then at college, and later at work. Highly insecurely attached children can miss out on this opportunity. Psychologist John Bowlby, a pioneer in attachment theory, allegedly said, "What cannot be communicated to the mother cannot be communicated to the self." In other words, those who feel insecurely attached might not quite understand themselves. To get to know who they are and what they feel, they might have to go way back in time.
So take a moment to reflect on your attachment type. Now, all that we have said about attachment can also be applied to attachment with God. So the research findings include spiritual attachment is similar to human attachment. So believers seek proximity to God and view God as their safe haven. and secure base, just like children and their parents. People with secure attachment view God as supportive, whereas people with anxious attachment may have a deeply emotional, grasping relationship with God. And people with avoidant attachment may view God as remote or inaccessible. Secure attachment to God is inversely related to distress, whereas anxious attachment to God and stressful life events are positively related to distress. And adding the attachment perspective helps us to experience God at a deeper level. So this is from Crispin Mayfield, Attached to God, a practical guide to deeper spiritual experience. So on the left, we see 3 attachment types or styles: anxious, shutdown or avoidant, and then the shame-filled or fearful avoidant, what they need, and healthy and unhealthy ways of meeting the need and the consequence. So let's introduce our case, a family of 4, and this is their background and attachment type in the specific relationships at home. So this is a case with Chinese parents very worried about their son's gaming behavior. So the father is 49 years old. He has frequent arguments and fights with his son. He explodes in anger, and he grew up in a very poor family, and he had to study very hard, sacrificing play to make it in the world. So he has anxious, ambivalent attachment with his son, in which he's very critical. So he says, my parents had to work very hard and were not there. And I want to be there for my son. I'm trying so hard to help and to guide him, yet he tells me I'm the worst father and don't deserve to be called father. The mother is 52-year-old, and she tries to break up the arguments and fights between the husband and son. So she feels stressed out, helpless, hopeless. She's suicidal, and she's also criticized by her partners being too soft and spoiling the son. So she has an avoidant attachment with her partner and son. She says, I don't want to be the one trying to stop the fights between my husband and son. It's better for me to be dead. But I know my daughter still needs me. The son is 16-year-old, and he is triggered by his father's anger, criticism, sarcasm, and now he argues and fights back. Usually it's over gaming with his friends online. So he has avoidant attachment with his parents. He says, I just stay in my room to avoid my father. I don't even eat dinner with them anymore. I wish I can move out. The daughter is 14 years old. She tries to ignore the father and brother fighting, sometimes screams at them to stop, and helps her mother to try to separate them. She has secure attachment with both her parents and her brother. She says, I try not to pay attention and go to my room and do my work. When I'm scared, I tell my brother to go to mom's room and my dad to go to my room to calm down. I wish everyone had good relationship with each other and are happy. You may ask, why is your attachment type so important? What difference does it make when you have secure attachment versus insecure attachment? Here's a quote from 2 leading attachment researchers in the world, Mikulincer and Shaver. Secure attachment as a style of a habitual engagement strategy has been linked in systematic research to almost every index of mental health and general well-being outlined in the social sciences. So let's look at the impact of attachment style on physical and mental health. And let me show you some Canadian data associating the frequency of common health conditions and attachment style. The statistically significant associations are marked in red. So if you're avoidant, you're more likely to experience arthritis, neck pain, back pain, headache, other chronic pain. And this makes sense because negative emotions are manifested in the body when there is avoidance and suppression. If you are fearful or anxious, you're more likely to experience headache, chronic pain, stroke, heart attack, high blood pressure, and ulcers. And when we look at depression, anxiety, alcohol and substance use, secure attachment is protective, while avoidant and fearful attachment are risk factors. Now, a crude indicator of attachment is marital status. So the years of life lost to all the common causes of death are increased significantly in the never married group. So imagine your partner nagging you all the time. Put on your seatbelt. Don't drive so fast. Go get your checkup. Get your teeth clean. Don't eat this. There's too much fat, too much salt, too much sugar, too much starch. Eat more fruit, more vegetable, more fiber. Don't drink, don't smoke. Take it easy. Do your exercise. Sleep earlier. All this nagging adds 11 years to your life. Let's go back to our family and look at the impact of attachment type on physical and mental health, especially in the parents. So the father, who has anxious ambivalent attachment with his son, says, "My sleep seems to be suffering. I can only sleep 4 or 5 hours each night. I'm stressed out from my family situation. My doctor says I have mild depression, anxiety, in addition to my anger management problems. I felt so tired, so I start to jog once or twice a week." The mother, who has avoidant attachment with both her partner and her son. "I feel anxious. I have poor sleep. I get frequent headaches, pain in my neck, in my back. I try to stay up late, have some quiet downtime, and to say goodnight to my son and wait for him to talk to me. I think of suicide as the only way to escape, but I won't do it because of my daughter. My doctor told me I have moderate depression and anxiety." Let's explore how attachment helps us to understand and conceptualize mental health challenges as stages in the loss of attachment, which is inherently very threatening to our nervous system. So watching the videoelectronic still face experiment, we can clearly identify the steps in disconnection or loss of attachment and the steps in repairing connection or restoring attachment. So we see the infant reaching out. This is an invitation to connect. And when there's emotional disconnection, when there's no response, we see the infant protesting, pushing, desperately demanding, turning away, and finally melts down. And then there's a repair of connection. There's emotional attunement, responsiveness, emotional presence, restoring safe connection, soothing the nervous system, and effective communication, which leads to lasting love. Now, suppose the still face was not 3 minutes, but months and years. The child may be stuck in the stages of loss of attachment, which were observed by John Bowlby, an English psychiatrist who is the father of attachment theory. So, when the caregiver is emotionally inaccessible, unresponsive, unengaged, the child goes through predictable stages. The first stage is angry protest. Here we see the infant's angry eyes, angry face, with hands making a fist and raised to protest. And then there's anxious clinging. Here we see the infant leaning forward, reaching forward, trying to grab and cling to his mother. And then there's a depression of despair. Here we see the infant putting his hands in his mouth as if saying, "This is useless." Despair sets in. Then there's finally detachment. We see the infant turning away, not looking at his mother, flings his arms, the infant melts down and is dysregulated. Now, of course, we can be more professional and look at the stages of loss of attachment from the perspective and diagnostic criteria of the DSM-5. So angry protest may look like conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, psychosis, hypomania, or mania. And here we hear the father say, when I'm unable to connect with my son and have some influence on him, I just lose it. I cannot control my anger. My verbal and physical aggression just takes over. Anxious clinging. Here it may look like generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, separation anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, agoraphobia, school refusal and avoidance. Here the mother says, when I'm at home, my body is always tense. I'm always anticipating when my husband and son will fight again. And then there's a depression of despair, which may look like depression, self-harm, suicide, borderline personality, bipolar, bereavement. Here the mother says, I feel so hopeless and helpless that I start to believe that suicide is the only way out. Finally, there's the detachment. So it may look like autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD, addiction. And the son says, playing games with my buddies helps me to calm down, feel worthwhile and connected. I don't want to be at home. I can't afford to move out yet, so I just shut my door and stay in my own room. So we can understand mental health challenges, not only from a medical, biological, neurochemical perspective, but also from an attachment perspective. And we can have practical and effective treatment strategies in addition to medication. So all mental health challenges benefit from building secure attachment, which calms the nervous system. Now, I'm not suggesting people throw away their medication, but to continue medication that have proven benefit, but also add attachment to the treatment. So how do we apply attachment to working with individuals using emotionally focused therapy? So I will illustrate each goal of emotional focused therapy with individuals with some examples of our family in which we first work with the parents to engage them. So the first goal of emotional focused individual therapy is to offer corrective emotional experiences that positively impact model self and the other and shape stable lasting change. So a secure connection with self. And here the therapist says to the father, I can really see how hard you are working to be there for your son and how much you care for him and worry about his future. This shows that you are a good father trying to do your best. So the therapist creates a corrective emotional experience with the father by validating him. The second goal is to offer transformative moments where vulnerability is encountered with balance. So the therapist says to the father, so when you blow up and lose it inside, you are so scared that your son won't make it. If he didn't work as hard as you did in school and sacrifice play. That's a scary place to be in for a parent who wants your son to succeed like you. So the therapist helps the father assess his fear that the son cannot make it in this competitive world without working as hard as he did. And the father's anger is hiding his more vulnerable side, his deep fear. The third goal is to enable clients to move into the accessibility, openness, responsiveness, and full engagement that characterizes secure attachment with self and others. Here the father says, I didn't recognize that my way of helping and guiding my son actually traumatized him. No wonder he no longer feels safe with me and cannot trust me. Thank you for helping me see how my way of trying to help and guide him actually triggers him and makes him feel he's never good enough for me. And he actually said that to me. And later, of course, in the course of working with the father, he becomes aware of how his attempt to help and guide his son is experienced by his son as criticism and put down. The fourth goal is to help clients shape a coherent sense of a competent self that can deal with existential life issues and become a fully alive human being. Here, the therapist works with the son. Yes, of course, it's so hard to listen to your father when he tells you to stop gaming. One of the important developmental tasks as an adolescent is to find yourself, your identity, your values, your dreams, your peer, and how you can be yourself. And I can see you working so hard to have your own autonomy, to live your life on your own terms, not on your father's terms. And that is so normal, so healthy, and so necessary at this stage of your life. And then we see the son loosening up, and he raises his head to look at the therapist. Now, one of the impressive achievements that I see when I facilitate training in Hong Kong is the new high-speed rail. So you can hop on the train in the evening in Hong Kong and wake up the next morning in Beijing. So I will use an analogy of high-speed rail to explain the relationship between the stages and steps, the tango moves and emotion in emotional focus therapy. So the locomotive is the EFT tango, which is fueled by emotion. So when we engage emotion, when we repeat the EFT tango, the locomotive pulls the EFT train forward from a place of disconnection and negative sense of self to a place of secure connection and coherent integrated sense of self. And the train travels through 3 provinces and 9 cities representing the 3 stages and the 9 steps of EFT. And the journey, of course, may not be linear, so we may go back and revisit some of the provinces and the cities. So let's first look at the EFT tango. This is the locomotives that pulls the EFT train forward. So we repeat the moves in the EFT tangos as part of our therapeutic process. Again, this may not be linear. We're free to move fluidly forward or backward, repeating certain moves or combination of moves as needed. And this is what happens in each move of the EFT tango in terms of the therapeutic change. So when we mirror the present process, we reflect the interactional and the emotional processes that are creating and maintaining distress and disconnection. When we assemble and deepen emotion, we render alien, frightening, unacceptable emotions normal, human, understandable, and manageable. When we choreograph, engage, encounter, we're restructuring attachment to create corrective emotional experiences, which of course may be imagined when we work with individuals. We process an encounter, we reshape a positive sense of self and sense of other, we integrate and we validate to consolidate the positive changes. Let's illustrate the first 3 tango moves with the father in our family. So the therapist reflects the father's interactional and emotional process with his son. Then the therapist assembles and deepens the core elements of the father's emotion to make sense and integrate them. And then there's an encounter to create corrective emotional experience with the therapist. So the therapist says to the father, very soft and slow, I see you working very hard to be the father that you never had, to be there to help and guide your son. So it's so hard when he rejects your help and your guidance. The father nods. Yes, I feel seen and understood when you say that. Therapist. So, when your son won't listen and won't stop gaming, your worries about him get the best of you. You feel the aggression take over as you try to fix him, and you remind yourself your son cannot succeed by gaming, but only by working hard like you. Then you start yelling at him. Father relaxes. That's exactly what happens inside me when I get so angry. I just want the best for my son, and it hurts when he doesn't see my love and good intentions. I'm already a much better father than my own father, who was so passive and totally absent. And he sighs. Let's illustrate the tango moves with the mother. The therapist uses an image to reflect the mother's role in the interactional process in the family. Then the therapist helps the mother make sense of her emotions, and the counter to create a corrective emotional experience is with the therapist. Therapist to mother. The image that comes to my mind is that you are trying to stop two out of control teenagers fighting and trying to hurt each other when your husband and son are fighting. Mother pauses to think, yes, I never looked at it that way. No wonder I feel so hopeless and helpless and would rather be dead. Therapist. It makes so much sense that when you're stuck with this impossible task, your whole body tenses up and you tell yourself, I'd rather be dead and not be in this situation. Am I getting it right? Mother. That's right. I really don't want to die, but I'm just looking for a way out of this painful recurrent situation of seeing the two people I love fighting and hurting each other. So as we repeat the EFT tango in every session, we progress from stage 1, stabilization, to stage 2, restructuring attachment, and finally to stage 3, consolidation. Now let's take a look at how we apply attachment to working with a couple to strengthen their parenting alliance. So, attachment-focused couple therapy, we strengthen the attachment bond between the partners to help them to regulate their emotions to stay balanced. And their secure connection with each other also will strengthen the parental co-alliance and counter any blame and shame. So during the storm of their children's adolescence, partners need to be a secure base and safe haven for each other. Then they can help each other be a secure base and safe haven to their adolescent children and to launch them successfully. Let's illustrate this with our case example of how the couple can be attachment resource to each other to stay emotionally balanced and responsive to their children. So therapist to the husband. That is a difficult place when your son swears at you and tells you you don't deserve to be called father. Husband. I start by apologizing, asking my son what changes he wants to see. And if he continues to swear at me, eventually I just lose control, blow up, and scream at him. Therapist to husband. I wonder what would happen if you imagine your wife telling you how she sees you working so hard to be a good father, to help and guide your son. And she also tells you she can see how much you love your son and care for him. Husband. If I hear her validating me like that, I would relax and calm down right away. Those words, what you just said, are so comforting and soothing. They take my anger away. I know my wife will not say those words that mean so much to me. Therapist to wife. When your husband is stuck in his anger, feeling his worst father when his own son is swearing at him. What he needs is someone to see and validate his hard work and love for his son. That would mean a lot to him and help diffuse his anger. Can you try to respond to him in a way that comforts and soothes him during these tough situations? Wife, come to think about it, that is very true. When we visit his father, he's still not engaged, though he is there. And I can see my husband working hard to be a better father and care for our son. Therapist to wife, could you turn to your husband, look at him, and tell him that? You see his hard work, and you see his love for his son? Wife turning to husband, because the doctor says, you are a much better father than your own father. I can see how hard you're trying to help and guide your son, and how much you care for him and worry over him. Therapist to wife, what was it like to share that with your husband? Wife, that was hard. I'm usually so caught up in my own anxiety, I just scream and try to separate them. I never thought of my husband needing me to validate and comfort him. Therapist to husband, what was it like to hear that from your wife? She notices your hard work and love for your son. Husband, her validating words took away my anger. I no longer feel I'm the worst father, as my son says. I feel comforted and soothed. The tension, aggression in my body seem to just dissolve away. Therapist to husband, can you turn to your wife and tell her how important her understanding, support, and validation is when you are angry and feeling rejected by your son? Husband, yes. Your support and validation changes everything. When we apply attachment to working with families, the stages and steps in emotional family therapy are similar. But when we work with families, we focus on activating the parent's caregiving response and working through any blocks in stage 1. We help the child reach for the now softened, more responsive parent with their attachment needs in stage 2. And then we help the parent to respond to the child's need with empathy, thus creating a corrective emotional experience in which the family and we reshape the sense of self and the sense of other in the family. Relationship blocks to caregiving and care seeking can be understood from the perspective of the attachment type of the parent and that of the child. So the parent may over-respond. The parent may also under-respond. And the child may intensify their reactivity or minimize their reaction. Let's illustrate how we use attachment to work with the family as the father becomes more responsive to his son and his son becomes more safe in sharing this with his father. Therapist to son, what happened when you told your father you had to do a group project and could not go to your grandparents for dinner as planned? Son, he told me that was fine and hoped I have enough time to get my project done. Therapist to son, how is different from his previous response when you could not go to your grandparents' place? Before, he would tell me he knows that I'm not really doing my schoolwork and I'm just gaming with my friends, which would get me so mad. And even though I had no intention of gaming, I would game just to spite him. Father, we're getting better. I'm trying to control my anger. We haven't had a fight in over 2 weeks, which is a record for us. Let's finish by exploring how attachment can be used to work with groups. And here, of course, faith communities and faith leaders are way ahead of mental health professionals in recognizing the power of group therapy and in creating and supporting ongoing groups. Emotionally focused group therapy, it's also validated, and the group format have proven effective, and it's also very user-friendly with standardized facilitators guide and participants workbook that is available through ISET. So one of the advantages of using emotional focused therapy is that all three modalities are also available in the group format. So here are the groups based on emotionally focused family therapy. Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go for families with adolescent children, and Hold Me Tight, Let Me Be Me for families with adult children. And then here are the groups based on emotionally focused couple therapy. Hold Me Tight, Relationship Enhancement and Education Program for couples. And then there's Creative for Connection for Christian couples, Healing Hearts Together for couples with cardiac disease. And the groups for couples have been around the longest and has the most outcome research demonstrating effectiveness. And we have partnered with a local faith community and published our outcome with Chinese couples showing improvement in all the dimensions of the dyadic adjustment scale, improvement in attachment security, and in family functioning. And there are groups based on emotionally focused individual therapy, which we're developing and refining right now, called Journey to Wholeness, Coming Home to the Self. The version for Christians is called Journey to Wholeness, Coming Home to the Self in Christ. And when it comes to groups, it really makes sense to build partnerships with faith communities which already have the infrastructure, culture, and resources to support groups. And systematic research in many countries find that religious coping is widespread, and meta-analysis show that religious involvement reduce depression and hasten recovery from depression. So, in view of overwhelming needs, meager resources, inequalities and barriers to access mental health care, partnerships with faith communities make a powerful impact. But this requires mental health professionals to build partnerships with local faith communities at multiple levels. And these levels of mental health care partnership with faith communities include the following: providing resources for and facilitating psychoeducation, which is effective in both prevention and treatment, training and targeting and supervising lay caregivers, enhancing pastoral counseling, and also facilitating referrals to professionals. So many of these levels can be facilitated in a group setting, which is the most effective use of limited resources that can help the greatest number of people. And we have studied the outcome of psychoeducational groups in partnership with faith communities. So we compared the participant scores before and after a 12-week course on self-esteem. So self-esteem, depression, anxiety, relationship satisfaction are all significantly improved. And our psychoeducational group for couples also show significant improvement in all the dimensions of the dyadic adjustment scale. And let's illustrate how our family benefited from the Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go groups for families with adolescents. And the father says, "Thank you so much for referring us to the Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go program. We completed 4 sessions already, and it's immensely helpful. I can see that all the other families were like us. Every family has similar challenges and difficulties. We felt normal, accepted, understood, and supported in the group." The mother shares, "I felt like everyone was talking about our family and seemed to know what was happening in our family from the shared experience. I don't feel as alone and as isolated. I'm more hopeful that we will find a way out and not be stuck anymore. And the father shares, it was important for us to do the homework exercises together as a couple. That has helped us to be on the same page and openly discuss many issues and understand where each other is coming from. Now we can work better as a team. In summary, using a clinical case, we have shown how we can use attachment to understand and transform behavior, cognition, emotion, and relationship with God, family member, partners, and parts of self through case examples and videos. And secondly, participants had the opportunity to experience how attachment can be applied to working with individuals, couples, family, and groups as if they were in the therapy room through example from our case. Now we have time to take some questions, and here are some links to resources from our center, Grace Health Center. So resources for counseling and for the community resources, the groups that we facilitate. So anyone have any questions?